All right, folks, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Wednesday, May 1st, 2019. The Minneapolis police officer, he has been convicted in the death of a woman there. Folks are saying, so you convict the dark-skinned Muslim cop for killing a white woman, but the cop who killed Philando Castile, he went free. We'll talk to an activist there in Minneapolis about that decision. Bob Barr testifies before the Senate today. Ooh, things got a little hot between the Democratic senators and Barr. Did he lie to Congress? Hell yeah, he did. And we have a video of Senators Cory Booker and Kamala Harris questioning Barr. You can't wait to see that. Also, speaking of Cory Booker, whoa, did he take a shot at Senator Bernie Sanders when it comes to allowing those who are in prison to vote? Boy, wait till we show you that video. Also, a black student leader at American University who was targeted by white supremacists, she is suing the Daily Stormer Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. They are representing her in that case. And also the Congressional Black Caucus, we have an exclusive on Roland Martin Unfiltered. They are going after Sirius XM radio for the lack of black high-level executives as well as blacks on their boards of directors. The CBC says point blank they're going to use their power to hold these publicly traded companies accountable for lack of black representation. Also today, the House Finance Committee hearing took place dealing with discrimination in auto loans. Kristen Clark of the Lawyers Committee, she testified. We'll show you some of that. And Stephen Moore, the guy Donald Trump has appointed to the Federal Reserve Board, has to get approved by the Senate. What's up with him and his racist joke about black people living in public housing? When you hear how he tries to explain his actual joke. Also, the president of Bennett College give us an update on the accreditation issues they have been facing. All of that right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. It's time to bring the funk. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. Yeah, it's Uncle Roro, y'all. Yeah, yeah, it's Roland Martin. Yeah, yeah, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Yesterday in Minneapolis, Mohammed Noor, a police officer, was found guilty of third-degree manslaughter for the shooting death of Justine Damon Ruzick. Took place July 15, 2017. And the reason why this is controversial for lots of folks is that the officer who shot and killed Philando Castile, remember, he wasn't even charged in that case. And folks are saying, oh, so when you have black cop kills white woman, then you have justice. But when you have white cops who kill black folks, no justice. That's what folks in Minneapolis are talking about. The question is, are they right? Joining us right now is Minneapolis activist and attorney, Nekima Levy-Armstrong. Normally, y'all know about Nekima Levy-Pounds, but she since got married. Nekima, how you doing?
I'm good, Roland. How are you?
Doing great. I take it you're there at a protest right now in Minneapolis?
Yes, I am. The protest will be underway soon. I'm going to try to get you a shot of the people assembling. There's a Justice for Justine committee, which consists of Justine Damon's friends and neighbors who have been standing up for justice for her since she was killed. So they organized today's rally and they invited African-American activists and other activists of color to stand in solidarity with them.
So what are they actually protesting? Because the officer, he's been found guilty.
Yes, he was found guilty, which was unprecedented in the state of Minnesota for an officer to be convicted of murdering a civilian while on duty. And one of the interesting things about this case is the fact that we have white allies, such as the people who knew Justine, who are still calling out the racial inequities and inequalities within the justice system. And they agree with us that there is really no just outcome in this situation because white officers who kill people are still allowed to do so with impunity. The verdict in this case sent a message to black officers that they will be treated like suspects and criminals and not given the same amount of deference that white officers are given when they claim that they feared for their safety. So I've been really impressed by this group of people who are calling out the racial injustices within the system while also demanding accountability for the life of Justine Damon.
And, what is stunning here, again, first of all, I've read many counts. People say that this was the just verdict, those of us who believe in justice when you have these police officers who do wrongdoing. But again, to sit here and to realize that what happened with this cop, it sort of reminds me when you had the Asian cop in Brooklyn who shot and killed an African-American who was also found guilty, even though the sentencing was a joke there. Yet, again, folks are saying rarely will you see a white cop who is involved in this where something is happening. And in fact, if I'm correct with this officer here, that the fraternal order police, they weren't even backing this guy.
Right. The Police Federation normally comes out and makes a statement strongly in support of officers who kill people. And in this case, they largely remain silent. Now, we have had trouble with the Police Federation for several years, especially the leader, Bob Kroll, who has his own history of using excessive force against civilians and particularly against African-American men. He has dozens of counts against him. So we're not surprised when he defends officers who engage in misconduct, who engage in violence. But in this instance, for once, he decided to remain silent while this officer had to face the justice system. And so once again, it's another example of uneven justice when there is a black officer who is being accused of wrongdoing. I do not feel that a just outcome was possible in this case because, again, white officers are allowed to kill with impunity. So we don't feel safe. Most of the murders that have been committed by police officers have been committed by white male police officers who have not been held accountable. Many of them still have their jobs, still collecting a pension, still collecting a paycheck, and are still patrolling the streets. So we don't feel safe, and this verdict does not make us feel safe.
All right, then. Well, Nakima, we certainly appreciate your activism. Thank you so very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I want to now go to my panel here. Dr. Cleo Manago, social political analyst and activist, joining me via Skype. Alexis Green, spoken word artist, and Eugene Craig, CEO of the Eugene Craig Organization. Cleo, I'll start with you. And this is one of those situations where people actually are confused because they'll say, well, why are you complaining? The officer was found guilty because the reality is, what does this officer look like?
Yeah, she just raised the issue. I mean, the issue is that, as she already said, that white people aren't treated like this. White cops aren't treated like this. I didn't know all the details until just now in terms of more of the nuances. And it's interesting that with the brother cop who did this killing, did not get any support from his peers. I'm wondering if Diamond's family has that as part of their analysis or their support today while they're having this rally. They also understand that the black cop who was found guilty might be a victim of racism. I'm just wondering if they're considering that as while they're standing in solidarity on the issue of police brutality in general. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty much a norm among police systems in this country. When black people are up for grabs, they don't get as much support as the white cops who have done most of the murders. It's pretty much the way it is.
Eugene, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is this. A cop kills somebody, the cop should deal with the consequences as if there was someone else, as if they were a normal human being, if they're a normal American citizen. I do think there's a nuance here of race. The cop is black, the cop is Muslim, and I think that probably did play a factor in his conviction. But I do think there's two things we should point out. The family and friends of Justine, they are using this as a platform to help elevate the situation of black Americans, black and brown folk that are killed by white cops, and standing in solidarity. And the second thing is this. This issue isn't necessarily a black and white issue, and that can go either way. This is a blue versus everybody issue. And the issue is that this particular cop, he looks to be Somali and Muslim. He deployed the same training and situational awareness that the white cops use, and it just happened that he was convicted.
But it's not a blue versus everybody issue because the blue people backed off from the black person in this instance.
Well, I guess he would be considered part of everybody in this particular case.
Alexis, go ahead.
See, for me, I think, well, for one, I want to start off by saying, in an effort to highlight the unity or the opportunity for unity in this moment, I think that it's remarkable that the white people who are grieving over Justine's death can even take this moment of grief and this moment of, getting a conviction, like she actually got justice, and still use this opportunity to highlight Black Lives Matter issues and the issues with injustice for Black people who end up in the same situation as Justine. So I do think we have to give credit where credit is due, because they didn't have to do that. They could just say, we got our justice and let's just move on with our own business. But they took that moment to highlight other issues within other communities. So I have to give credit where credit is due on that. The second thing I would say is that when it comes to if this was a white cop and a Black person was the victim, it would be handled differently. We've seen that time and time again. So by no means am I saying that a Black officer should get away with killing a white person. I'm saying that any cop who kills an innocent person, whether they're Black, white, blue, brown, whatever, they should be convicted. So it doesn't matter what race the cop is. It's just a matter of there should be justice for all. Justice for Justine as a white woman, but also for everyone else as Black people, brown people, or whatever color people.
Absolutely, and well, so good. It comes down to simple justice, and what it boils down to. Speaking of justice, did we actually have any of that today when Bill Barr testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee? I'm sorry. It was quite interesting today. Of course, he was saying that he was not going to do so because he couldn't dare get questioned by other folks. Now we also have a report I got in just a few moments ago. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Attorney General William Barr is not expected to testify at a House Judiciary Committee Thursday. I guess today didn't go so well for the Attorney General. Man, he under withering questions from Democrats, Republicans. I'm sorry, Regina. I don't know what the hell they keep doing. They brought up Benghazi and Hillary's emails again. I mean, what the hell next? I think they want to relitigate Whitewater and Ken Starr. But here's some video here, folks, when Senator Kamala Harris asked Barr whether or not the White House asked or suggested he investigate anyone.
Attorney General Barr, has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no?
Could you repeat that question?
I will repeat it.
Yeah.
Has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir?
The president or anybody else?
Seems you would remember something like that and be able to tell us.
Yeah, but I'm trying to grapple with the word suggest. I mean, there have been discussions of matters out there that they have not asked me to open an investigation, but
Perhaps they've suggested,
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
hinted,
I don't know.
inferred. You don't know. Okay.
Senator Cory Booker, he got a chance to question Barr as well, so check this out.
Should the American people be grateful that in the face of our attack on our democracy by a foreign adversary, that the President of the United States made several documented attempts to thwart an investigation into the links between his campaigns and Russia? You use that word grateful again, that the American people should be grateful. Is that something we should be grateful for?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Sir, I'm talking about the attempts that this president made, that Mueller pointed to at least 10 attempts to thwart an investigation into the links between his campaign and Russia. Should we be grateful for those 10 well-documented attempts by Mueller?
Are you talking about the obstruction part of the report?
I'm talking about the second volume, but let me continue. Should the American people be grateful that Trump had more than 215 documented contacts between Russian-linked operatives and then lied about them and tried to hide them? Is that something the American people should be grateful for any president, this one or any down the road?
As I mentioned earlier, during a campaign, foreign governments make and foreign citizens frequently make a lot of attempts to contact different campaigns. If we were right now to go and look at, for example, Hillary Clinton's campaign during the same time frame, then you would see a lot of foreign government,
Sir,
like Chinese, trying to establish.
And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say to you, sir, is that we right now have a new normal in our country. We have a document that shows over 200 connections between a presidential campaign and a foreign adversary, sharing information that would be illegal if you did it with a super PAC. We know that. But
What information was shared?
Polling data was shared, sir. It's in the report. I can cite you the page.
With who?
And I guess my point is that your willingness to seem to brush over this and use words like the American people should be grateful. What's in this report? Nobody should be grateful. Concerted efforts for deception, for misleading, inappropriate action after inappropriate action that is clear. And then on top of that, at a time that we all recognize that we had a foreign power trying to undermine our election, you, the chief law enforcement officer, not only undermines your own credibility as an independent actor when there's ongoing investigation still, using the president's own words, having it criticized by the Mueller himself. But the challenge we now have is that we are going into an area where you seem to not even be willing to be in the least bit critical in your summarizations.
Eugene, he even lied when they said, did Bob Mueller disagree with your statement? He said, no, he didn't. It was a lie. When he testified before the House before, he told Representative Chris Van Hollen that, no, Bob Mueller did not disagree with him. Now, all of a sudden today, first of all, we now know that Bob Mueller did. He sent a letter, put it down on paper, and the guy's still lying.
Yeah, the thing is this, Bill Barr is now caught in perjury. He danced around Senator Harris's questions. Part of it was probably to avoid giving a straight answer, which would have implicated him and the president. Probably the other part was to drain out her time. And when it came to Cory Booker's questioning, I mean, look, he's very clearly perjured himself. There's a reason why he's canceling tomorrow's hearing with the House. I think, very swiftly the House should, move to hold him in contempt. And this time next year, when the State of the Union, he decides to march on through, have a sergeant at arms of Capitol Police, go ahead and arrest him.
Alexis, I got a kick out of literally just the flat out just lying by Barr and then acting as if he shouldn't. How dare you even question me about any of this?
Yeah, I got a kick out of just watching him respond to Senator Kamala Harris in the way that he was just like, stuttering and trying to dance around the question. It's like, this is a clear example of when someone's caught in a lie and they're trying to say everything around it but just admit the truth. It got so hard for me to watch to where it was just like, at this point, you might as well just say I lied or I messed up or whatever. Because he didn't answer any question directly. And I feel like at this point, just by watching the video, anyone can see like your credibility is shot. You're somebody that the American people are supposed to trust, and your credibility is shot now because you can't even answer a simple question in a straightforward manner. Like Kamala Harris had to sit there and give you synonyms after synonyms for you to answer one question. You couldn't do that. So it's like your credibility is shot, and at this point, him canceling the meeting tomorrow, whatever, it makes sense. At this point, you might as well just say I lied or I messed up or just try telling the truth this time.
Cleo, what's quite interesting is this here. I'm going to pull up this statement here, and so this is what was released today. Let me try to blow it up here. So today, the Attorney General testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee for over 5 hours. Blah 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 blah. But this is what I love here. He made himself available to this committee by volunteering to testify this week, meaning the House committee. Unfortunately, even after the Attorney General volunteered to testify, Chairman Nadler placed conditions on the House Judiciary Committee hearing that are unprecedented and unnecessary. Congress and the executive branch are co-equal branches of government, and each have a constitutional obligation to respect and accommodate one another's legitimate interests. Chairman Nadler's insistence on having staff question the Attorney General, a Senate-confirmed cabinet member, is inappropriate. Further, in light of the fact that the majority of the House committee, including Chairman Nadler, are themselves attorneys, and the chairman has the ability and authority to fashion the hearing in a way that allows for efficient and thorough questioning by the members themselves, the chairman's request is also unnecessary. Here's why I'm laughing. Bob Barr had no problem with the White House saying Don McGahn can't testify because we don't want him to, not invoking executive privilege. So they had no respect for the three branches of government. They are filing a lawsuit against Chairman Elijah Cummings because they want Deutsche Bank to turn over financial records of Trump. Trump and his three children are suing Congress. No respect for the equal branch of government. Third, they have routinely said, no, we're not going to allow others to testify. No respect for the branch of government. Bill Barr, gave Trump's personal attorneys access to the Mueller report before he gave it to Congress. No respect for a co-equal branch of government. What really Bill Barr is saying right here is, I don't want some pesky staffer. How dare they get to ask me questions? I'm the Attorney General. But they actually said in here that the chairman has the ability and the authority. I love this here. The chairman has the ability and authority to fashion the hearing in a way, which means the chairman can do what the hell the chairman wants to do. But they're objecting to the chairman doing what he wants to do.
Yeah, I have to say it again. These people are consistently doing what they want to do to deflect anybody getting in the way of their agenda. What I found interesting when I watched Kamala and Cory address Barr, I saw a worldview debate. For example, Cory referred to Russia as a foreign adversary. I don't believe that Barr or Trump or his comrades see Putin as a foreign adversary. They see him as a comrade, as somebody else who has a capitalist white supremacist agenda to run the Western world, or his part of the world in Putin's case. So what's going on here is a resistance to anything that's going to get in the way of them successfully doing what they want to do. You just brought up these facts going on here in terms of who's disrespecting who. But one of the reasons that I believe that Barr was stuttering is because Barr is not interested in the perspective of Kamala or Booker. He's not interested. And he does not want to take it seriously because all of them are on the train to keep white America great again, if you will. They're not concerned about rules and regulations, and they do like to think that they're superior. So how dare someone question Barr? I am the Attorney General. I am the general of white supremacy. You don't get to question me.
Right.
Well, indeed, people do get to question him, but the bottom line is that they shut down and start stuttering when there's a challenge because they're not interested.
Eugene, I just get a kick out how we're co-equals except when we don't want to treat you like a co-equal.
Yeah, well, that's the way of this administration and the way of the current GOP. If you go back 7 or so years, these folk were willing to hold Eric Holder in contempt of Congress over documents in regards to Fast and Furious. This is probably 2,000 times more pertinent, important, and devastating what's going on with this administration. And so I think if this is the type of game they want to play, Chairman Nadler needs to tee up and play ball. Hold, Bill Barr in contempt. Hold Don McGahn in contempt. These folk are not invoking executive privilege. They have no legal ground. Executive privilege in itself is nothing more than a gracious overture. They have no legal ground to prevent someone from testifying from Congress. This is legal. This is legally obstruction of justice. They're literally obstructing an investigation. And so I think Chairman Nadler needs to get ready to tee up and hold some folk in contempt of Congress. And look, to take it a step further, Congress has the power of the purse. If the AG and the White House want to play this type of ball game, go ahead and go after their budget.
But why are they not impeaching Trump?
Because they're scared.
Because that's the bottom line.
Now, let me say it. Democrats are scared. Democrats don't want to play hardball. Mm-hmm. Democrats want to play softball.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you, there's no way, Alexis, there's no way that if a Democratic president, if President Barack Obama had done what Donald Trump did, I can guarantee you the Republicans will not be saying, well, I don't know. We're not quite sure. Would not be happening, Alexis.
That is very true. I mean, I feel like if all this is happening to Barack Obama, there are several reasons why this wouldn't transpire the same way. Aside from him being a Democrat, then him being a black man, this wouldn't happen the same way. Because, again, we're talking about which party the president is involved in. We're talking about race when we're talking about white supremacy. So there's a whole bunch of factors that come into play as to why Trump is getting away with this in the first place. Why someone like it would be a Republican white man who can get away with even the allegation that someone from an outside country came in and affected the election. A black man, a black president, Obama specifically, would not be able to even get away with an allegation like that, let alone Trump getting away with it for this long. Because if we're being honest, by the time we even get a full, truthful answer about what happened and if or not Russia was involved with the election, Trump's term will probably be over. And so it's like we're doing all of this when it's like they're just going to drag this out for as long as they possibly can to the point where his term is going to be over and then it won't even matter anymore.
Well, the bottom line is that Obama, different from Trump, was a very, very careful and strategic president. He was very involved in what happened to him optically, and he was very, very careful. One of the ways to look at him in terms of some of his self-consciousness around being careful is watching the first Romney debate with Barack. Trump ain't careful. Trump don't care. Trump says what he wants to do, and he's not concerned about optics or even the truth. So the comparison is bizarre to me because Obama wouldn't even do nothing like this because he didn't want to offend a lot of people, and Trump don't care.
Well, and thugs don't care. Thugs don't care. Eugene, 30 seconds. Hold on 1 second. Hold on, wait. 30 seconds. Go, Eugene.
Really quickly, with all the perjury from Bill Barr now to two major committees in Congress, both Judiciary Committee and House and Senate, I think, if they aren't willing to go and impeach Trump, there's a very strong case to impeach Bill Barr.
Alexis, go.
I think, again, Trump is able to get away with it because, again, white supremacy, being a white Republican man, works in his favor. Well, Obama was, in fact, very much so careful during his presidency, but it's because he had to be for several different reasons.
Well, bottom line is, Don, I disagree with that.
I do, too.
When you're the most powerful person in the country, you go ahead.
The final 4 years,
you go ahead and use the power. All right, y'all, let's talk about the power of voting. First and foremost, lots of conversation. Democrats have been asked about people who are incarcerated, should they have the right to vote. And all these media people, okay, with this dumbass fixation on, well, what about the Boston terrorists? Out of all the people in jail, the argument wants to be framed about the Boston terrorists, and then they want to say, what about Dylan Roof? Okay, two people out of there are 2.3 million people who are in prison in America, more than 200,000 on the federal level. And the debate has been around whether or not two individuals should get the right to vote. Senator Cory Booker's like, you know what? I'm tired of this BS my damn self. And he had no problem calling out Senator Bernie Sanders. Press play.
I want to ask you about in your Justice for All plan, you've long worked on criminal justice issues. You want to give convicted felons the right to vote. As I'm sure you know, Senator Sanders has said they should not only have the right to vote when they're released from prison, they should have that right while they're incarcerated. Do you agree with him?
I just think that is a frustrating debate that we seem to now be having. As a guy who lives in an inner city black community and knows that there are millions of Americans that are being arrested and convicted and should never be there in the first, and not only lose their right to vote, but they lose their liberty. Let's get this conversation back to where it is right now. Our prison population in this country has gone up 500% since 1980 alone. We locked up more people for marijuana in 2017 than all the violent crimes combined. And so here we have a nation that takes away people's liberty and their right to vote for doing things that two of the last three presidents admitted to doing. So if Bernie Sanders wants to get involved in the conversation about whether Dylan Roof and the marathon bomber should have the right to vote, my focus is liberating black and brown people and low-income people from prison, because we have a system in America, as Brian Stevenson says, it treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. My focus is tearing down the system of mass incarceration so that we don't even have to have the debate about people's voting rights because they're not going to prison in in the first place. People that don't belong there are there, and I'm going to stop that as president.
Cleo, Senator Booker's there saying, basically, Bernie Sanders, damn it, stop falling for the okie doke, falling for the bait.
Well, not only from my perspective is it falling for the okie doke, but Bernie Sanders has a white worldview. So Dylan Roof and the marathon bomber fits in his worldview in terms of what he thinks is important iconically. And Booker, who's a black man, talked about what was important to him iconically as a black man in terms of the majority of people being in prison don't look like Dylan and don't look like the marathon bomber.
But Eugene, my problem is these are these stupid folks in mainstream media who want to run to, again, the absolute extreme, as opposed to what Senator Cory Booker is saying. It's like, no, look at the totality. And so, so what? Should Dylan Roof be able to vote? And Booker's like, really? So you're going to talk about him, but you're going to skip the person who had a third strike, who's frankly, non-threatening felon who's stuck in federal prison. But that's the BS you have from these mainstream media people.
Yeah, when we're discussing this, you got to bring it to the origin of it. The reason we're having this discussion is because the question came from somebody that was a member of a police union who probably don't want convicted felons to have their right to vote back regardless.
Right.
And framed it in that particular way of the Boston bomber and just like snowballed from there. But the thing is this, we shouldn't be talking about this in the extremes. The majority of folk behind bars right now are nonviolent drug offenders. And the thing is this, if you're going to count these people when it comes to the census, which directs how federal dollars are doled out and whatnot, if you're going to use these people to keep communities alive, because when you have these folk incarcerated, it creates jobs at the prisons, then absolutely these people should have a right to vote and have a say in what's going on in the world around them.
Alexis?
Yeah, I agree with Cory Booker. I don't think that we should take extreme examples when looking at this issue. I think if the question is, should people who are incarcerated be able to vote, I think there should be rules and regulations around it. I think it should be not people who are convicted of violent crimes. If you're convicted, you're in prison for selling marijuana or something like of that nature, then yes, I think you should have the right to vote. If you're in prison for bombing or shooting up a church, no, you shouldn't have the right to vote. I think there could be regulations to it.
All right, folks. Hey, remember the story of the American University student, a sister. Her name was Taylor Dumpson. She was the first black president at American University. Well, she was targeted by these white supremacists. Well, she is now with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, suing the Daily Stormer for $1.8 million for that online harassment. They, of course, previously beat them, but now they're going after them and also the website as well. And so we certainly wish them good luck in that particular case as well. And so it makes loads of sense. Speaking of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, today there was a hearing on Capitol Hill dealing with the issue of discrimination in auto loans. Kristen Clark, she, of course, is the executive director and president of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. She testified about the impact of discrimination when it comes to auto loans. And don't forget, the Trump administration, one of the first bills they signed, Republicans got rid of an Obama-era law that dealt with discrimination in auto lending. Here's some of that hearing.
Discriminatory auto lending poses grave financial danger to African American, Latino, and other vulnerable consumers. Increasingly, lenders are taking advantage of a highly unregulated and unmonitored market to promote discriminatory and predatory practices. As the third largest source of outstanding household debt after mortgages and student loans, car loans and their impact on communities of color warrant greater scrutiny. There is a stark racial wealth divide in our country today. A typical white family has $140,000 in wealth, while a typical African American family has just over $3,400. Abusive, predatory automobile lending and lack of access to equitable financial services contribute to and exacerbate this racial wealth gap. Widespread racial discrimination in the market is not new and has been well documented for over the past 30 years. African Americans and other consumers of color face discrimination in various ways when purchasing and financing a car. They're often charged higher prices, higher interest rates, more expensive insurance on the basis of their race or ethnicity, and they're also targeted for predatory sales and repossession schemes. Racial bias also seeps into the industry by way of discretionary dealer markups, and often indirect auto lenders fail to have controls in place to prevent discretionary markup pricing disparities resulting from car dealers' racial bias, resulting in people of color being burdened with more expensive loans than white consumers. While much lending discrimination can be identified through statistics, there's also evidence of intentional discrimination throughout the industry. A recent 2018 study by the National Fair Housing Alliance used match pair testing in Virginia that showed that almost 63% of the time borrowers of color received costlier loans, even though they were more qualified than their white counterparts. What must be done? We ask Congress to enact robust legislation to increase protections for borrowers of color by prohibiting or significantly limiting discretionary dealer markups. We need more oversight over the Justice Department and CFPB to understand why their enforcement activity has come to a grinding halt. And finally, we need more transparency and data collection to help us get a better understanding of the extent of discrimination across the auto lending industry.
Hey, Eugene, does Candace Owens now believe no discrimination exists in America?
I'm not sure, but I would be 100% sure that she probably would not take the time to actually research the topic or research the issue like this.
She can read?
I was going to say, I want to jump out there and say, whoever the next Democrat president is needs to create an equity czar and appoint Kristen Clark, because she's out here just saving the day left and right. What House Republicans did in the last Congress when they had power and removing the rules that were put in place, I believe, under Dodd-Frank that prevented discrimination in auto lending was absolutely atrocious. I'm grateful that the House Economic Matters Committee is taking a look at this and looking to put some of these rules back in place, because look, there are still vestiges of redlining and other forms of lending discrimination from the Jim Crow era that still affect us today.
Alexis, what you have here is, again, you have Republicans who want to act as if everything is all well, we don't need these things. And again, they undid an Obama-era rule that specifically dealt with discrimination in auto lending.
And see, I think the problem is that when we start talking about discrimination or racism, systematic oppression, this is an example of what we're talking about. So when Republicans or Black people who forget that they're Black start talking about there is no discrimination in America, there is no racism, it's like it's in the systems. It's in instances like this where people can systematically oppress Black people or people of color. Like she talked about, Ms. Clark talked about the wealth gap widening because of issues like this. This is how they keep Black people oppressed and in these, situations. And I just personally think that when it comes to little ways that people can enforce racism and discrimination, we have to, like Ms. Clark is doing, we have to really pay attention to all the ways that racism and discrimination can be implemented into society to try to weed it out.
And again, before I go to Cleo, just for folks to know that this was one of the first things Republicans took up in the United States House when they had control. And do y'all remember that scene on the floor when Congresswoman Maxine Waters was having none of it with this other Republican, and she says, "I will not yield"? They were talking about this very issue. Mm-hmm. Y'all know I had to play Auntie Maxine. Henry, go to my iPad.
Make sure that we're making America great every day in every way. And the best way to do that is to stop talking about discrimination and start talking about the nation. We're coming together as a people in spite of what you say. Thank you, gentlemen. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. The gentleman from Texas reserves, the gentlelady from California.
Thank you very much. The gentleman, Mr. Kelly, please do not leave. Because I want you to know that I am more offended as an African-American woman than you will ever be. And this business about making America great again, it is your president that's dividing this country. And don't talk to me about the fact that we don't understand what happens on the automobile. No, I will not yield. No, I will not yell.
Okay.
Don't tell me that we don't understand. That's the attitude that's been given toward women time and time again.
The gentlelady will suspend. The chair wishes to remind all members that they are to address their remarks to the chair.
I
Gentlelady will
respect the
continue.
chair, but don't stop me in the middle when you didn't stop him in the middle. And so I shall continue. Don't you dare talk to me like that and think that somehow women don't understand what goes on the floor of automobile dealers.
Minded to direct her remarks to the chair. The gentlelady
And I
will
am
continue
saying that
in
I
order.
will continue to do that. However, I don't appreciate that you did not interrupt him when he was making those outrageous remarks about him knowing more about discrimination than I know about discrimination. I resent that, and I resent the remark about making America great again. He's down here making a speech for this dishonorable president of the United States of America. Having said that, I reserve the balance of my time, and no,
yield?
I do not yield not 1 second
Only what I
to you.
expected. Thank you,
Not
ma'am.
1 second. Not 1 second to you.
Ooh, hashtag team whip that ass, Cleo.
Well, what we just witnessed, particularly with what was the white dude's name?
Don't matter.
We just witnessed a contrast between black mental health and white mental illness. And what I mean by that is that the white dude said he understood discrimination. Now, we need to read between the lines. When a white person says they understand discrimination, they're talking about against white people and against white interests and white supremacist values. Let's be real clear. If we listen to it with logic or with some type of utopian perspective, we'll get lost. He means discriminating against us because our numbers are dwindling and we don't want to lose power. That's what he means. But Maxine is always known to be a strong, vibrant black woman who knows who she is, and I've known her for many years, and she's quite brilliant, quite focused, quite aware, quite healthy, and she always does not sit around and take any smack. But we need to understand what we're dealing with. She was trying to shut down, and she's effectively shut down, a raving, irrational white supremacist who was trying to control the floor with his agenda, and the good thing that she did was deflect that crap.
But again,
because it is crap.
But the bottom line is they did repeal it, sign it into law because they don't want to deal with the very issue. All right, folks, we come back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. We're going to talk about Bennett College and their issues with accreditation, and Sirius XM Radio. The Congressional Black Caucus has some questions for them, saying, where are your black executives and where are your black board members? All that next on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, folks, as you know, media is a critically important issue. Representation in media is important. I'm a lifetime member of the National Association of Black Journalists, Vice President Digital. We've been kicking the butts of networks like CNN for lack of black executives in the C-suite as well. And so the Congressional Black Caucus, they stood with us on this. Folks, I got this exclusive here, this letter, the CBC sent a letter to Sirius XM Radio. And it was dated, give me 1 second, we're going to pull the letter up 1 second. It was dated, I believe, April 23rd. And this letter went out to James Meyer, the CEO and director of Sirius XM Holding. And the Congressional Black Caucus expressing some deep concern about, again, their lack of black leadership. Guys, pull it up, please. And so this is what the CBC wrote. We find your corporation's lack of diversity especially problematic, given the fact that African Americans and Hispanics drive consumption among streaming services. According to Nielsen, 52% of African Americans and 45% of Hispanics use streaming services for music, radio, and podcasts, compared to 40% of their white counterparts. This level of consumption leads to increased advertisement on the channels in which we listen, resulting in business growth for streaming services at Sirius XM and companies alike. Our constituents regularly share with us their concerns that content does not reflect the priorities of our communities. Diverse leaders are needed to understand the needs of our communities. In fact, also in the same letter, the Congressional Black Caucus say this: the reality that Sirius XM doesn't have a single black executive or shareholder on its board of directors is abysmal and presents a significant risk for the success of your business and our economy. Also, in the same letter, they also talk about Pandora. Now, here's the deal. Sirius XM Radio, they purchased Pandora, creating the largest audio entertainment company in the world. They acquired Pandora Media for $3.5 billion. In the letter, this is what the CBC says. Pandora's Diversity and Inclusion Report, released at the end of 2018, demonstrates the lack of black shareholders on the board of directors and in the C-suite. In fact, not a single board member or C-suite executive is black. Sirius XM is no different, and there is no evidence that the new organization will be any different. Now, in the same letter the CBC sent to them, this is what they wrote about, again, Pandora. Go to my iPad, Henry, please. This is what they actually said. They said that on January 31st, 2019, our senior staff met with Pandora's Chief Diversity Officer, Adomize Warner, and Senior Director of Government Relations and Policy, Caitlin Brousseau, to discuss the findings of the Diversity and Inclusion Report and the Sirius XM Pandora merger. During this conversation, we asked specific questions regarding board, C-suite, and supplier diversity. Their responses highlighted that there were currently no African Americans on the board and did not provide sufficient evidence of a plan to increase that diversity. They also indicated in their responses that there was no process in place to measure supplier and vendor diversity at that time. The stats showing an increase of employees of color in leadership roles from 20 to 22%, and the percentage of women in leadership roles rose from 38 to 39%, shows that the status quo will not accomplish the results our constituents wish to see. The letter was signed by Karen Bass, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, CBC Diversity Task Force co-chair, and also Congressman G.K. Butterfield of North Carolina, co-chair of the same CBC Diversity Task Force. Now, folks, let me also just further unpack this. As I said, the CBC joined us with NABJ in demanding accountability from CNN for having no black executive producers, no black vice presidents, no black EPs, no black SVPs, no black executive vice presidents, and no black direct reports. That was about 2 months ago. To this day, there's been no improvement at all, nothing happening at CNN. This is why pressure is important. You also might remember on this show, Roland Martin Unfiltered, we had Congressman Gregory Meeks, who has put forth legislation to demand that publicly traded companies reveal their black executives, the folks who are in the C-suite. Now, let me go ahead and address this right now because, see, before I even pull up comments that are on our message boards, I've already had these dumbasses on YouTube and Twitter send me these comments. I have these idiots who go, well, why are you sitting here begging a white man for a job? Why don't you go create your own? First and foremost, we are consumers. We should be demanding, folks. Chelsea, go get the book out of my bag, please. My backpack, since you're sitting right there. Go ahead and get it for me so I can walk black folks who are watching through, who don't have any understanding of actual history at all. The reason you demand this, because the reality is black people cannot create every single institution in the doggone country and assume that black people are going to be the only folks supporting that, okay? Let me be real clear. So if you're one of those folks who say, start Start your own black law firm. Start your own black this. Start your own black that. No, we should be also hired in those positions, in those companies as well. It's called reciprocity. That's what we've always done. And so we should have people like the CBC and NABJ and other groups demanding those very things. And so if any of y'all start that mess with me about we need to start our own, black folks supporting our own, I'll ask you. We got a black-owned media show here. There's no other show like this here. Are you writing a check? Are you part of our fan club? If not, you one of those folks who all you doing is running your damn mouth and doing nothing. So that's why I'm calling you out. And so the CBC challenging Sirius XM is critically important. Now, for the black folks out there, again, who are watching, who know nothing about our history, y'all run around here saying Reverend Jesse Jackson ain't nothing and the civil rights movement didn't do nothing. Here's a book that I had the author on News One now that I'm going to go ahead and hold up for you. This is the book right here. If y'all could zoom in, I appreciate that. The book is called Operation Breadbasket, an untold story of civil rights in Chicago, 1966 to 1971, by Martin L. Depp. Martin is a white pastor in Chicago who was a part of the coalition that actually went out and demanded equity from various companies in Chicago. This is the book right here, Operation Breadbasket, okay? So let me walk you through what Operation Breadbasket did. First of all, the idea came from Reverend Leon Sullivan in Philadelphia. Dr. King heard about how he was utilizing pastors, putting pressure on companies to hire African Americans. Dr. King asked Reverend Sullivan to come present the idea to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Once he did, Dr. King said, I love it. SCLC is going to adopt it. And they called it Operation Breadbasket because the first companies they went after were bread companies. And so Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. was in Chicago. Dr. King put him over Operation Breadbasket in Chicago. So what did they do? They targeted companies, dairy producers. They targeted soft drink companies. And what they did was they examined all of their numbers, their black employment numbers, supply diversity numbers, and demanding equity. Now, it was based on 6 points in terms of how the campaign actually proceeded. It was called a Don't Buy campaign. So, number one was called information gathering. That was number one. Number two was called committee evaluation. Number three, negotiation and education. Number four, economic withdrawal. Number five, agreement covenant. Number six, monitoring. And what you'll discover is that, and he lays out in here, that as a result, by targeting these companies, demanding they hire African Americans, after the first round, there was some $1.5 to $2 million in economic capital that was generated for African Americans who were hired by these companies. Now, they didn't just sign the covenants. They said one of the mistakes that they made was that they were not properly following up to make sure they hired all the different people. Now, they shifted also from just demanding jobs to going after supermarkets to put black goods on the store shelves. And so if Cleo or Eugene or Alexis, if they own a black business, they couldn't get their products on the store shelves. And so Reverend Jackson began to meet with these folks at University of Chicago, actually Chicago Theological Seminary, and then they 14 initial black businesses. They went after the supermarkets, forced them to put black products on those shelves. That's how they created those black millionaires. And so what Reverend Jackson has been doing with capital companies like Arrow Capital Management, bondholders and others is opening those doors to African Americans. Now, again, for that idiot who is sitting here commenting right now who say it doesn't matter, let me explain to you how big of a deal this is. If Cleo or Eugene or Alexis is sitting here, can do one of these jobs, they all of a sudden go on the board of directors. That means stock options. That means they get paid for it. If they get hired one of these C-suite jobs, that means now they get stock options, higher salaries as a result of that. So versus African Americans only being relegated to these small, lower level positions, let's say you're getting paid $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, you're now competing for those jobs that are paying $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 or even more. Which now means that if let's say it was Cleo's cousin, who's a graduate of Morehouse or graduate of Florida A&M, and he now all of a sudden has a job at Sirius making $500,000, guess what? He is now in a better position to actually cut a check to Morehouse or Florida A&M. He's in a better position to cut a check to the NAACP or the Urban League or some other institutions. And so when we start talking about forcing these companies to respect black folks and hire black folks for these jobs, we're talking about creating economic opportunities for African Americans, also for their families, creating and building wealth, and also for black institutions. And so what we should stop doing is trashing folks like the CBC. I don't know what y'all doing, but by saying, how are they demanding companies come to the table? It's the exact same thing that we're doing with CNN, with ABC News, with NBC, and all these companies in NABJ, because we understand that we are a part of this country as well, and we cannot be frozen out of economic opportunities. This is an economic conversation. This is not just about, oh, can you just hire one or two? The fact of the matter is we're being frozen out of these opportunities. White folks are being passed these opportunities left and right, and that's why when you see Hollywood, go to Deadline.com. Every time you turn around and somebody's getting hired as a studio chief or this person, is always somebody white, because we don't get those jobs. Those are jobs they can do till they're 60, 70, 80 years old. The jobs that we get, oh, so-and-so got hired for a role. No, we should be supporting our institutions, demanding accountability for our folks when it comes to these type of jobs. And so I certainly appreciate what the CBC is doing by pressing Sirius XM radio. And so we need to learn and utilize what was done before. What Operation Breadbasket did, created a lineage of black millionaires in Chicago, in Atlanta, and across the country, because they used the economic buying power of African Americans to force these companies to change. In fact, there was one company, this is what this CEO said, I would rather have you picket us now because we didn't promise enough than to picket us a year from now because we didn't do what we promised. There are other CEOs who said they were scared because if black folks start pulling their dollars, stop shopping there, they also will stop making money. Sirius don't want black folks to cut off Sirius XM radio. So the CBC is doing what is right. Cleo, I want to go with you. I love it how we keep acting as if stuff that's old can't be used today. This is called the CBC, Democrats taking control of the House, now having power. As Maxine said at the NAACP, I have the gavel and I'm not afraid to use it. They are saying to these publicly traded companies, you are going to pay attention to black people, or we are going to call you out and use our power to bring you to the table.
Well, one of the reasons there's this generation gap between what we have accomplished in the past during the civil rights movement, et cetera, and the ignorance of today is that, as you and I've talked about before, we don't talk about our history. We don't actively pass down black history as a rites of passage. So a lot of young people, and I engage them all the time, have no clue about their history, and they look at somebody like Jesse Jackson as a distant dinosaur because they have no clue. People like you help to inform them. But I'm fascinated by what the CBC is doing with Sirius XM, because this is serious territory, Roland. This is the media. The media...
The last bastion.
Exactly. I wrote about this being the last bastion years ago. This is the final frontier, because the media controls our psyche. It controls our worldview. Unfortunately, it also controls the black self-concept. I talk all the time about the fact that there's no such thing consistently, reliably, as an independent black-on-black love story in popular culture media.
Right.
And this is not... These are not accidents. For example, there's no such thing as a black person who can greenlight the popular film in Hollywood.
Not one.
No such thing.
An African American has never run a Hollywood studio in his history. You've had a black man run American Express, a black woman run Xerox, a black man who is the chairman of the board of Microsoft, but has never run a Hollywood studio.
See, this point I want to make before you go to the next person is that that's different. See, those are not media iconic phenomena. The media itself is very important in terms of how the brainwashing occurs.
And let me also add this here. No African American has ever run a news network. An African American has never run NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News Channel. Not one.
And while white people are grappling to clean the power right now, it's going to be interesting to see what NABJ and you guys accomplish regarding confronting them. You said you haven't heard from them in 2 months.
Oh, no. But they still, CNN is still tripping because they're like, we're not going to talk to NABJ
I know.
because of Roland.
Because of Roland.
But guess
That's
what?
an excuse.
But here's the piece, though. We have elections in May. I'm running unopposed. I ain't going nowhere for 2 years. I'm just saying. I want to pull in Eugene and Alexis here. Alexis, this is important because, again, for black people, this is not about Lauren Coates having a show on Sirius XM or Joe Madison or Karen Hunter or Mark Thompson, even though he was pulled off the air and they're still back and forth whether he's going to come back or not. This is not about black hosts. This is about black power on the executive side, and that's why the CBC is challenging Sirius XM.
Yeah, so I think that, so the first thing I want to say is that you're talking about there not being any black executives on different levels of executives. So we're talking about VPs, SVPs, like different tiers of executives. And so for me, the first thing I want to say is if this was a conversation about there not being, let's say, for example, just any black VPs, like just one tier, then we can run with the argument, okay, maybe it's a coincidence or maybe, it just so happened to be like that, because we also don't want to start getting token black people either. But we're talking about there's different tiers to the executives, and there's not a single black person in any of these tiers, then it becomes suspicious. Then it becomes you couldn't find one black person, you couldn't find multiple black people to be in these positions.
And that means no black pipeline.
A conversation that does need to be had.
That means no pipeline. So which means that if you don't get the lower level executive job, hell, you'll never be CEO because you're not even in the pipeline.
Right, you do have to be in the pipeline, and I feel like, again, my whole point is that, again, if a particular job is not fulfilled by a black person, and if a white person or somebody of a different race was just so happen to be more qualified, then I can understand that. But again, for there to be all these different jobs and not, black people in any of them, then that does raise eyebrows to say, okay, what is really going on here? And I think what has to happen is that the CBC does have to, press this issue, and simultaneously we have to just continue to encourage people to call out entities like Sirius XM, and also continue to encourage people to go for these types of positions, because like you said, with no people of color being in these positions, that is very discouraging. But I feel like if we simultaneously call out these entities while still encouraging black people to go for these positions, then some real change can happen.
Eugene, 7:01 p.m. This dude Think Biz on YouTube. With all respect, why must we continue to ask for inclusion into this country's inner workings? Maybe a new movement to build our own with us in the driver's seat is a better approach for 2019. Hey, Think Biz, have your ass cut a check? Have you even given $5 to Roland Martin Unfiltered? See, this is what kills me, Eugene. This notion that somehow, well, no, let's don't even do that. Hell no. We built it, we want it, and we're going to demand it. Yeah. And again, black folks use our economic power to say, if you don't give it to us, you're not going to get paid.
So the thing is this, Roland, what makes this more damning in 2019 than what it was when Operation Breadbasket was being implemented is this. The number one product of Pandora and every other streaming service is hip-hop music and hip-hop adjacent music. Hip-hop streams, sometimes 5 to 10 times better than pop, than rock, than country, which a lot of times, in the case of Taylor Swift, isn't even available on streaming services. And so, the thing is this. It's not, we're asking for equity and a seat at the table because you're taking our product and you're making billions off of it. It's something that's being discussed across the hip-hop community all over, because it's like, hey, what's the true value of a stream? You're paying, pennies on a dollar, literally half a cent per stream, but you're raking in billions in advertising. And the merger with XM Sirius and what they're trying to do with the accessibility of the Pandora side and accessibility of the XM Sirius radio side is absolutely crazy. And there's literally no argument they can make when they're paying somebody like a Howard Stern, who is literally a dinosaur, who's losing appeal day in, day out, $100 million a year, and have very few limited options for black content. And is absolutely demonstrable.
And let me just say this real quick, because again, it kills me for these people who don't know a damn thing about history. Vision Board Promotions on YouTube. I'm gonna call you out. I've yet to see or hear about a low-level black employee rising to a VP or CEO in corporate America Maybe there's one somewhere out there. Yeah, vision board promotions. You ever heard of Don Thompson? Started as a worker at McDonald's, became the first black CEO of McDonald's worldwide. Yes, Don Thompson. Look him up. DonThompson. How about Ursula Burns, who was the assistant to the CEO at Xerox? Guess what? She later became the CEO of Xerox. So the reality is there are black folks. The point is, if we are not in the pipeline, we will never be CEO and in control of those dollars. And so we'll continue to cover this story with the CBC holding them accountable. I didn't do this story yesterday. I got to get it in. We were at the American Heart Association event Monday, Greensboro, North Carolina. And Bennett College is one of the 5 institutions that were competing for a $100,000 grant from the American Heart Association to improve healthy outcomes for African Americans. Well, the president of Bennett College, Dr. Dawkins, she was actually there. And I said, you know what the hell? Give me an update on what's going on with y'all drama with the accreditation. Here's our conversation. All right, Doc, last time we had you on the show, we were talking about raising the $5 million needed for the accreditation, and you're raising excess of $9 million. And so are you free and clear? What's the status with Bennett's accreditation?
Yes, we filed a lawsuit against SATS on February 22nd when we did not win our appeal process. So we're in the process, but we are still accredited by SATS, and we're also seeking another accreditation from TRACS.
So that's obviously shocking to some people because I'm sure you thought, look, if we raise the money, wasn't that the major deal? You need to raise the amount of money. Then all of a sudden you do. Then what? The goalposts get moved?
Yes, the goalposts moved from February 4th when we submitted our brief to support our appeal. What we thought was the calculation we needed moved from $5 million to $7 million. But still, in spite of that, we raised, in terms of submitting prior to the appeal hearing, we had submitted at least $8.2 million in verified funds, in spite of the goalposts moving.
And so now you got to spend money on lawyers and things along those lines, which sort of defeats the purpose of raising all the money that's supposed to go to students.
That's correct. So now we are seeking to raise funds to help with our legal fees, at the same time provide appropriate services to our students to help us reach our fiscal stability.
Now, is there an issue with this, with the accreditation? I mean, is it, what's the issue here? Because surely that had to have thrown you, that, all the fundraising you were doing, then all of a sudden, I'm still having to deal with drama with the accreditation.
Right. It's a hard appill to swallow. We only have one out of 90 standards that we had to address at the time, and that one's on financial resources. And so we thought that the only thing we needed to do is raise $5 million that would help our appeals case, but they did not recognize those funds.
All right, so that's going to take a year to 18 months. In the process, what are you doing to ensure the future viability of Bennett?
So we're also seeking another accreditation from a national accrediting body called TRACS. At the same time, we are accredited by SATS, COC. So it's conceivable that we may maintain 2 accreditations at the same time.
And obviously, for folks who don't understand, in order for your students to be able to qualify for financial aid, you have to be accredited. And so those things are two. In the case of Morris Brown, when they lost their accreditation, those students who went there, they couldn't qualify for federal loans.
That's correct. So the goal is to maintain an accreditation, either by SATS or TRACS, and both are recognized by the Department of Education. So both, if you are accredited by either one of those bodies, our students can receive federal financial aid.
All right. Well, look, we certainly appreciate it. And anything you need, be sure to reach out to us, and we'll keep spreading the word on our platform.
Well, thank you. The Roland Martin Show has been good to Bennett College, so thank you for your support.
All right, Bennett, we're going to keep standing by y'all. Also, real quick, here we go to my iPad. For the first time, an African-American and a woman is the head of, actually, that's breaking news. Remy Ma, the rapper, arrested for misdemeanor assault. What the hell? You on parole and you getting arrested. 1 month left for you getting arrested for beating somebody up at a birthday party. I'm not losing my money because of you. Here we go to my iPad. Adrienne Jones, first African-American elected head of the Maryland House as a House Speaker. She was unanimous election. It came down to 3 African Americans. Republicans threw their support when they couldn't choose one and threw their support behind her. And so, again, a black woman, first woman and first African American who is head of the Maryland House. Hopefully, Eugene, we're going to see some black stuff come out that House now, but we'll see.
Let me tell you something. We talk a lot about black political power. What the Legislative Black Caucus did with this speaker's race, they held their own, they held out against literally the weight of the entire Democrat Party and said, look, we want a black speaker. We're only going to work with a black speaker. We're only going to vote for a black speaker. Even Adrienne Jones, who was Speaker pro tem under the last speaker, the race started out with 3 people. She ended up with throwing her weight behind the gentleman, Delegate Davis. And look, the LBC said, we'll partner with the GOP. And I commend Delegate Kipke for delivering the GOP votes en bloc for a black speaker and forcing the Democrats who literally turned their back on the LBC for the power for the Dem establishment to make this happen. And so Adrienne Jones is a compromise between all sides, and that's what you have today, and it's history being made.
Eugene, I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Alexis, thank you so very much. Cleo, we appreciate it as well. Hey, folks, the reason why you should be supporting Roland Martin Unfiltered, joining our Bring the Funk fan club, signing up via Cash App, PayPal, or Square, because we cover stuff nobody else covers. Trust me, mainstream media not going to say jack about the CBC going after Sirius XM Radio, because their executive suites look the exact same way as Sirius XM Radio. And so we want you to support us for what we're doing. This is about black dollars, about us being in control of our narrative, being in control of power as well. And so that's what it's all about. Go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, join our Bring the Funk fan club. You can sign up. Look, you can give monthly, you can give one time, once a year. It doesn't matter. But we have to depend on you to keep our doors open and to keep telling our story independently and without having to ask anybody else for permission. All right, folks, I got to go. Y'all have an absolutely great day. Holla! You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.